This is Trial 2. My name's Tom Allison. Of the people here, I probably have known David the longest. I've known him since 3rd grade, Goshen Center School, Goshen, Connecticut. Goshen's kind of an interesting town. There's a corner of it, which is known as Hall Meadow. And in Hall Meadow, at the very end of Hall Meadow, before you get into the town of Norfolk, was the Borbos farm. Dave's mom, I think, had horses and that. And he had to come all the way from there. They couldn't go to the Torrington school. They had to come all the way down to West Torrington, then all the way up to Goshen to go to school. They must have gotten up at the crack of dawn or before. And met him in 3rd grade. We were chummy then. I always thought of him as jolly. He wore glasses, and I was about to get to wear glasses because I was trying not to wear glasses because I thought that was a problem. But Dave let me try his on. And oh my gosh, I could see the board better. So thanks to David, I finally admitted that I needed to wear glasses. And we went through school together. And by the time when he got to high school, at junior high in 7th grade, there was a little posse of us. There was myself and my friend Fred Barker and David's cousin Ray Wilson, and Bill Gangel, who was another guy from Goshen. We would kind of hang around, and they'd come over to my house and play cards. And our house was always drop in. My parents loved to have my friends come over, and that was that. And then we always sat at the corner table in the cafeteria. David was the only one, when he took up his plates and tray, would say, "Hello, Mr. Allison," because my dad was the head custodian there. And he was always at the ready with a mop and a bucket during lunchtime. And David was just absolutely amazing in art. He could do very creative things. And he was also just a nice person to talk to. And I remember going up 2 or 3 times to his house once we got cars, and just hanging out, and he was showing me the farm and everything like that. And one time he says, "Don't tell anybody," but he says, I'm going to fill up your gas tank." Well, of course, it was gas that was intended for farm use, not to be used on the road. And I felt very guilty with that gas. Oh my gosh. It's funny to think about that. But anyways, we kind of went our separate ways. Then we reconnected for the 40th class reunion. And when Dave walked in, I felt he hadn't changed. I know he had, but he looked just the same. And he said the same thing to me. He says, "Tom, you just look the same." And we chummed around in that and had a good laugh or two, and then promised to stay in touch, but of course we didn't. Finally, at one point, I said, I did what I do a lot. Is one of my hobbies is to type in the word obituary, an address, and somebody's name. And you'd be surprised how many times I get in touch with people, well, after they've passed away, of course. But of course, it never showed up. It instead was for Deb because of her connections with the town. And so there was an address, so I sent a card. Well, it was a place they hadn't lived for 11 years, but the people who lived there took this and said, well, this obviously somebody used to live here. So they did a little gumshoe work, and lo and behold, we got back in touch. And that was great fun. And we were been on and off, an email back and forth and that. And as Carl Jung says, he's a Swiss psychotherapist, psychologist, and that, said that people come into our lives for a reason. And as a congregational minister, I was thinking maybe one of the reasons to be in is to make a connection. Sometimes we need to make a connection back to the earliest people who remember us, because that's special and sacred in our lives, is to be remembered. And so maybe this is all because is to be here today and just say, David was a great guy even way back then, and well liked and talented. And I'd like to share with you a little something that has always been a part of every funeral I've done, and there's been many of them. It's an old Scottish poem, very old, probably 18th century, by a man that was known as the blind poet of Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock's in southwest Scotland, near where Braveheart came from. And it goes, now the loom is silent, and the shuttles cease to fly, and God unrolls the canvas to explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hands as the ones of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. Deb, thank you very much for letting me be a part of Dave's send-off. Bless you all.